Hello everyone, welcome. Today what we're going to be doing is starting a series of tutorials for use of Rhino 3D version 8. This is January 2024 and it is the latest version of Rhino at this point, and it is a phenomenal bit of software for creating 3D objects, doing some basic renderings, technical drawings, architecturals, basically modeling anything from a piece of jewelry all the way up to a city block. So really powerful software. So let's go ahead and get started. It's actually my favorite modeling software, whether you're talking about Blender, AutoCAD, Revit, any of them. It has the most versatility, I think. So when I originally open up the software, this is the screen here. But what I'm going to do is, first things first, and this is crucial, you want to go up to File, and then go to New, ... And the reason why we want to do that is on the PC version, we want to make sure we select millimeters here. So I'm going to do large objects millimeters because I'm going to be designing mostly in the initial drawings. We're going to be doing more industrial design kind of stuff like objects. And then we're going to be moving into architectural stuff in later videos, but we're going to start off in millimeters because that is it's the best system. All right, so I'm going to click on millimeters and then I'm going to go use this file when Rhino starts down here, and that'll create a template. And for those of you who are using a Mac, when you open up Rhino the first time or anytime, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. And you can just find large object millimeters there and click on Make Default Template. So it's slightly different. And I will, throughout the course of the introduction video here, show you the subtle differences between Mac and PC versions of Rhino. So bear with me. For all of you who are using a PC, I will be kind of referencing this every once in a while just to make sure the Mac people are on the same page. Great, so let's go back here. Make this file Rhino starts, template, default, blah, 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 open. Okay, so now we're in millimeters. And the fun thing is if you don't know how to use millimeters because you've never dealt with the metric system because you were born in America, where we've got our own imperial form of units, you can actually type in a couple of little key things to make Rhino recognize that you're dealing with inches and feet and translating them to the metric system size on the grid. So let's go over first the basic standard panel here with all of the user interface that you see here. So what we have is we have different principal orthographic views. Orthographic views are views that do not have any perspective in order to draw things technically accurate. We also have a perspective view here for creating things that have more reference to the way reality looks. So objects where you can see these lines on the grid go back into a vanishing point in the far back here, similar to perspective drawings, where these are all just square, right? And that's what we use principally for drafting purposes. We have a top view, a front view, and a right view, okay? And we'll show what that does in a minute here. We also have several graphical kind of quality images of different objects and modifiers here, similar to what you would have with Photoshop, Illustrator, any other design software. The top here on the standard bar, similar to most design softwares, you've got like new file, open file, print, all that kind of stuff. You've also got some hotkeys here for those of you who are not using a three-wheel mouse and need some kind of a way of navigating the picture plane without using the hotkeys. Now, mind you, I recommend everybody use a three-button mouse. That means one button left, one button right, and a center wheel that also clicks. It's going to make things much easier in any 3D design program. Okay, and then you've got things up here like layers, hiding and showing different parts of the objects, which is really handy for when you're working on a specific part. If you're working on a city block, you might only be working on one house. Why would you want to have the entire city cluttering up your scene? You can hide things. Then we've got over here probably one of the most important tools to make sure you're mindful of are snaps. Okay, so we've got O snaps and selection filters. Okay, O snaps by default here are what we're going to be using mostly. So selection filters are if you want to just grab certain parts of an object and leave other parts alone. O snaps right here are basically ways of having your crosshairs or your target lock onto specific parts of a model. So end, near, I usually leave near off. I'll use end, mid, center, interpolated, perpendicular, tangent, quadrant, and I leave the rest off for right now. And you can toggle those on and off really simply with disable and enable right here. And we'll show what that does in more detail pretty quick here. Also down here, we've got the different views that we're looking at right here. So I can change what I'm drawing in, highlighted right there on the bottom, perspective, top, front, right, or just by clicking in each one of these viewports, it activates which viewport we're drawing in. Down here at the bottom, we have specific things that are kind of like drafting tools. We have grid snap, which basically, if I draw some sort of a rectangle and I want it to just go right onto like one of these little grid spots, I can't perfectly grab it. I can kind of approximate it, but if you turn grid snap on, you'll see it just automatically snaps to the grid when I'm entering into a command. I usually leave that off for the most part. Maybe when I'm starting a drawing, I might use grid snap just to be a little bit more accurate as to where I'm placing things so it's not in limbo. Ortho here basically makes sure that all lines are drawn straight. So if I draw a line with ortho on, it will only draw at 90 degrees. If I have ortho off, the line will draw at any angle. Similar to a drafting arm on a drafting table. So really handy. Ortho is important. Also, if you don't have ortho on, but you want things to be orthographically drawn for a moment, you can just hold down Shift and it'll automatically toggle ortho on. And if you already have ortho on, it'll also toggle it off. So if I hold down Shift, it toggles it off if I've got that button selected. Okay, and a lot of this is going to be important information. I would even take notes as to what that is. What does ortho do? It draws things at 90-degree angles. What does grid snap do? It makes sure that the lines are snapped to the grid. What are object snaps? They grab on parts of the object that are related to the name of it. And we'll talk more, and I'll do demonstrations on these in a minute here. So that's object snaps on and off. You can see it toggles the disable button on the left there. Okay. And I'm going to go through all of this with PC, and then I'll show you the Mac version in a minute. Most of this is going to be on the screen, but it's just not in the same spot for some wonderful reason. Smart Track basically allows you to line up objects based off of like so. And I'll get into what I'm doing on the screen in a minute here, but if I have Smart Track turned on and I wanted to draw another rectangle right next to that, so if I go rectangle and then I kind of grab on, don't click, but just kind of hover and then move, you see that line that comes up, that's Smart Track. So that way I can, and then I can come down here before clicking and kind of do it down here too. So it tracks the line. So that's Smart Track, okay? Oh, and for some reason, by default on mine, the selection filters were on. I just turn them off. Okay, so disable your selection filters. And that's just these two toggles right here. All right, leave it on object snap for now. Okay. Auto C plane to object, I'll show more in a minute here. Yeah, so that's basically all you need to know for right here. Then over here on the right, you can see you might have this kind of by default. You can toggle, usually I leave it in properties here. Properties, when nothing is selected, it's telling you about the properties of the overall scene. If you have an object selected, it'll tell you about the properties of that object, including things like materials, line weights, any of that kind of stuff. Layers is super crucial. That's where if you have a door, you might put it on a separate layer and call it door, so you can turn it on and off. You can lock it. You can do all kinds of stuff with layers, similar to what you might experience with other design softwares like Photoshop and Illustrator. Display, Nothing I'm going to mess with there. Materials, we don't have any materials yet, but that's going to be a real cool way for creating visualizations and stuff. And then the help window here is awesome because you're like, how do I use the extrude tool or whatever? And it'll give you some information there. And then, yeah, that's basically it for this. Other stuff here, file under here, you got properties window. That'll be where you can set up your units and stuff. We'll go into more of that stuff later on. So if say you don't have something's not acting right, you click on properties and then you go to units and you'll see, oh wait, I'm in feet and inches. No wonder it's not working with what we're talking about. So millimeters is what we're working in for now. Also annotation styles for those of you who are doing more technical drawings, all of that stuff is in there. And if you wanted to like change the appearance of things, I can do different, I can set it to dark mode. There's all kinds of stuff inside of properties. This is kind of the control for the overall scene, similar to what you've been dealing with in the past in other programs. Some of the other tool sets up here. C-planes are what we call construction planes, and those are awesome. Basically, construction planes are like the plane that you're drawing on, where this grid is located in space. Do you want it to be at a 0 level like the floor, or do you want it to be on the face of a surface so that you can work directly on the surface? Imagine you're drawing a doorknob on a door. You might want to set your construction plane to the door so that you can then draw the doorknob on the door. So that's construction planes. Set view, top, front, back, left, right, style of views. We'll talk about a little bit more in the future. Display, do you want it wireframe, solid, rendered, those kinds of things. Selection filtering, which is similar to right here. Visibility. Okay, I basically would come over here to sub-D tools. Sub-D tools, sub-Ds are similar to, they mean subdivision surfaces. That's basically the same kind of modeling language that you would deal with in Maya or Blender. So another great thing about Rhino is not only does it have all the wonderful tools of using NURBS-based modeling where it's very technically precise, but it also gives you all of the freedom that you would have to create more like character designs and organic forms, maybe like car bodies, that kind of stuff that you would have with a Maya or something like that. So really very versatile. Sub-Ds we'll get into when we do the character design tutorials in the next couple of videos. They're really awesome for creating organic form and controlling stuff like that. And that's basically all I want to go over right now. Let me pop over quickly to the user interface for Mac folks. Okay, so here's Rhino 8 for Mac. Very similar. You've got your object snaps, which are all disabled right here. Make sure you're using the same object snaps all the time when I am, because that might be a reason why something's not functioning right. So object snaps again, grab objects by specific spots. And then right here is your selection filter. Make sure all of the selection filtering is turned off. They have fixed several bits of the layout that were very different from the other, from the Windows version, which is nice. The main bit of difference is, I didn't talk about the command line previously, but I will in a second. So the command line here is just right here. It's this little small square. The command line, if you think about it, is more of a way of putting in bits of code, if you will. Like if I want to draw a rectangle, you would put a command rectangle, and then you could draw it. Or, of course, there are some visual cues here, like this is a rectangle as well. But that's basically hearkening back to coding languages that were developed alongside AutoCAD, and Rhino has, let's say, borrowed some of the functionalities that you get from AutoCAD, but also expanded on them in several ways. So the visuals here are about the same. So just the object snaps are right here. Most of this is very, very similar. You've got all of the O-snaps, Smart Track, Gumball, everything is in the same spot. Really, the only major difference is the command line is smaller. Okay. So yeah, over here on the right, again, you've got things like the layers. If you don't see materials, there's also, you can just type the word materials and it'll come up because there's no materials here right now by default, but you can pull up that window pretty easily in Rhino 8. So all the same stuff kind of applies. You can see our primary units are down here as well. So make sure you're kind of checking that every once in a while to make sure you're on the same page as me. Okay. So that's the Mac version. All right. So I neglected to mention the command line. So the command line is right here on the PC version. You can see it goes all the way across. It's longer. You know, it doesn't really even need to be for any specific reason, but it is. So that is that user interface stuff. Next up, let's talk a little bit about modeling. So what I like to do first is actually change my visual style, because by default it's in wireframe, and wireframe is good for keeping your computer from going crazy if you're dealing with large models and stuff, but it also isn't as visually interesting. So you can do set display here, and by default we're in wireframe. You can change it to solid here, or I'll show you how to do it in a second. So what I always like to do is start off in the perspective view, just especially for drawing purposes, kind of show you all the basics here, and you can see what I do in all three of these windows. So I'm going to start off by drawing a box. Okay, so I'm going to type the word box, and you don't have to like click up on the command line to do it. You can just type that word anywhere. The cursor's way over to the right. You can type box. The nice thing is like, okay, I want to draw a pyramid. Well, type the word pyramid. Just, it's very intuitive. So I want to draw a box. I hit enter. And then always pay attention to what the command line is asking for next. It's saying, give me the first corner of the base. Okay, so where do I want to start the box from? And I can either click, I can also use my grid snap. So if I do my grid snap here, zoom in this window here, see how it snaps right on that grid. I might want to just put it right on that corner, or I might want to put it up one just so it doesn't blend in so much with the Y and X axis. Okay, so if I click, then it says, okay, specify the other corner, and I can enter a measurement. Now, I mentioned that we're in the metric system. However, we can change systems based off of the nomenclature that we put into the computer. So if I want to draw this 1'6", because I don't know the math on how to make something 1'6" in millimeters, I can change that just by typing 1'6" shift quote, for 1'6". And that's the nomenclature in architectural imperial units. 1'6" is 1'6". Okay. So then I hit enter, and then if it asks me the width, I can do 1', enter, and then it asks me the height. I can do 6 for 6 inches. I have to put a quote, otherwise it'll do 6 millimeters. Watch. So 6 inches. Let me undo. Control Z to undo. Oops. I undid the whole thing. So again, where does it want me to start? I have my grid snap on. I'm going to right there. Click, drag out 1'6" quote. And then enter 1'6" quote. Oh, right. No, I want just 1 apostrophe. Sorry. 1 foot. And then my height, if I do 6, watch. That's 6 millimeters, right? So again, let me undo it. 1'6" inches, 1', and then 6 quote. So that's a way of kind of going around the metric system. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the metric system, you can also just use a mathematical times version. So we're going to be mostly doing stuff in the initial videos that are, 6 to 8 inches tall, not anything giant. So it's going to be in an approximate metric equivalent. So basically, if I've got something that is 10 inches tall, every inch is 25.4 millimeters. So you just say 10 inches would be 254 millimeters. And so that's the metric conversion, just to keep in your own mind. Things like CNC machines, 3D printers, they all use the metric system. And we will be probably fabricating some of this stuff as other demos in the future too. So getting into how to 3D print from this stuff, keeping it in the metric system and getting familiar with it, I think is very good. So 1'6". And you can see if I have this in wireframe, it looks like that. If I have it in shaded, it looks like that. Again, this is under the display settings here. Or it's also, if you hit the down arrow here, you can find it right here. Wireframe, shaded, rendered, they're all right there as well. These little down arrows next to it. And I'm not sure, did they update the Windows or the Mac version to put the down arrows? Yes, they did. Thank goodness. It's much better that way. All right. Okay, so that's the basics of making a single object. Now we can look in our scene here, and we can see how the different views look, right? So you can see that we're looking at it from the right view on this one, so that's why it's a smaller square. The left view here, and the top view here, okay? And how to navigate these scenes is if you have a 3-button mouse, the wheel rolls in and out to zoom in and out of the scene on all of these, and even the top and the perspective one. On the top, front, and right, the right click pans, which moves it around. And on the perspective view, the right click orbits or rotates around the scene. All right. If you want to pan the perspective view, you hold down Shift and then right click, and it pans. It becomes very intuitive after you work with it for a while. Say I wanted to just work on a perspective view here. I can always double click in here, which I find, especially when you're working on a laptop, it makes things much nicer. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the different types of display here. So right now we've got wireframe, shaded. This is shaded without lines. This is a rendered version, so that's going to give you like light and shadow. And if you had materials on here, we would also see those materials. This one is ray traced, which don't use it very often if you don't have a good computer. You can see it's kind of blown out right now, but we don't have any rendering settings really set up right now. So this is actually the highest quality version. And if I pulled in a material here, I could show you really easily, but I don't freak out if you don't have, if I'm kind of jumping ahead quickly here, because I'm going to create a new material and I'll change the color of it just so you can kind of see what it looks like when it's ray traced, because white, oops. Yeah, there we go. So there's kind of the ray traced. So ray traced is going to use cycles, which is very similar to what Blender uses. I like to use Blender more for rendering stuff out because I think that the lighting mechanisms in Blender are really nice, but you can get away with a lot just rendering in Rhino as well. So yeah, I just applied a red material to it, but we'll get into materials and stuff much later. So yeah, let's go ahead and cycle through these displays more. This is going to be like more of a ghosted, transparent view, which is nice for seeing things on the inside. A lot of people like to work in there. X-ray is like ghosted, except for the lines are more prominent. Monochrome is a new one that we just got, which is going to be awesome for architectural drawings. So that gives you a bit of shadow. It's still white, but it gives you those edges, which is really nice for architectural visualization. And then Arctic is going to be like that, but without the lines. So I really like monochrome. It does eat up a little bit more of your CPU, but it's a really nice looking display style. But for the sake of our computer software, not frying our computers, if we've got less powerful hardware, we'll just keep it in either shaded or wireframe for the most part until we get to the point where we'll be rendering things out. So that'll do it with the first part of this introduction. I will continue in part B.